They smashed my wife's brand new luxury car at 6 in the morning. Two wannabe cops with a crowbar going full psycho, glass exploding like somebody fired a shotgun down our street. I stood in my pajamas with a coffee in my hand and watched a dream get hammered into jagged little diamonds on the driveway. And you know that sick, slow kind of rage that feels almost polite because you're in shock. Yeah, that was me. The real joke, if there's anything funny about watching your life get vandalized, was they had no idea who they were messing with. Let me back up a beat. My name's Marcus, ex-Army Logistics, now a contractor who helps disabled vets retrofit their homes. Honest work, not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Elena, my wife. She'd just finished the kind of grind that eats people alive and somehow spits out success. 15 years on the job, night shifts, domestic violence calls, doing the kind of police work that leaves your bones tired and your conscience cleaner. Yesterday, the county commissioners called her in and told her she was the new police chief. She grinned like a kid holding a secret present and said we could finally buy the car we'd been dreaming about. So we did new driveway, new house, a marker that said, "We belong here." We moved into Willowbrook Heights, one of those picture-perfect communities where every yard looks like a golf hole, and the mailboxes seem to cost more than my first truck. Folks wave, people keep their hedges neat, and on paper it's paradise. But paradise has gatekeepers, and across the street lived Delilah Thornwick, the HOA president, with a smile that chewed you up and spit you out. She used to sell houses until her license got yanked for reasons people whispered about. Then she turned to running the neighborhood like a little private fiefdom. Her weapon. A nephew named Jake, unemployed, suddenly community standards enforcement for 40 grand a year, which honestly was Aunt Delilah buying herself a bully in a uniform. So there we were at dawn, me half awake, Elena inside getting ready for the swearing-in ceremony, and a citation stuck to our windshield like a consolation prize. Luxury vehicle display violation, Community Code 47. B. I read the HOA paperwork until my coffee went cold. There is nothing in there about vehicle value, nothing about showing off. The only car rule says just keep them reasonably clean. But then a diesel truck rumbled up the street and Delilah marched down our driveway, phone out, filming like it was theater night. Community safety supersedes property rights. She announced, the kind of line people throw at you when they want you to stop asking questions. Jake swung a crowbar at our car like he'd been trained at a comic convention, and when he couldn't tow it because it was locked, someone said, "Break the window, emergency access protocol." The first swing cracked the glass, the second shattered it, and that crunch, the sound of safety glass under Elena's polished boots, hit me like a punch. Elena walked out in full dress uniform at 6:47 a.m., badge shining ceremony at 8, and she found what looked like a ransom scene in our driveway. Shock rolled off her face, then fury, and then that dangerous kind of calm that cops have, the kind that reads evidence while everybody else is still screaming. She scanned the scene. 3 guys in discount security shirts, a tow truck, glass everywhere, Jake with crowbar posture, and she started doing exactly the thing she does best. She recorded, "Please repeat your legal authority to break my car window," she said on camera, cool as granite. Delilah started spouting some made-up law, Community Association Act, Section 47, Emergency Powers Clause, with the confidence of someone who'd never actually read the statutes. But Elena had. She'd studied HOA law back in college when she thought about property crime as a niche. State law boiled down is clear. An HOA can enforce written rules in governing documents, but it cannot authorize property damage, break-ins, or play cop. Elena kept her poker face weighted, and when Delilah bragged she'd written Code 47B herself to protect property values, Delilah confessed to making up rules out loud. On camera. The first twist, tiny but lethal, was Jake panicking. He tried to backpedal to save face, and Aunt Delilah snapped at him like a rabid chihuahua. It was the first time I realized how much of this was theater and how much was a con. Elena asked the right dumb questions with perfect timing. "So how long have you been president? How many families have you removed?" Delilah bragged and bragged, and then without realizing it, she told us she'd removed families through fines, liens, and foreclosures. Her mouth was a faucet that couldn't stop pouring criminal admissions. We started pulling at threads. Mrs. Patterson across the street, bless her, had a window camera on the whole thing and sent us 23 minutes of HD footage. Betty Kowalski, the neighborhood's unofficial bookkeeper, brought stacks of records that looked like somebody had color-coded extortion. She'd been collecting hundreds of thousands in fines over the years. Mr. Rodriguez told us she'd forced his daughter's wheelchair ramp down the road because it compromised the look of the house. I nearly spit my coffee. I spent half a decade helping vets with ADA compliance. The Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't bow to HOA aesthetics. What unfolded that afternoon was a neighborhood confessional. People came forward with stories that read like harassment dossiers. Betty spread her color-coded spreadsheets across our kitchen table like evidence at a murder trial, $127,000 collected over 7 years, mostly for violations that didn't exist. Harold, retired union organizer with a jaw like a doorstop, started smiling in a way that made me think of organizing. The second twist, bigger now, was that Delilah, in trying to bully everyone into silence, had given us the exact proof we needed. Delilah doubled down. She sent a paranoid manifesto, mandatory meeting, $500 fines for non-attendance, and she hit every mailbox with emergency assessments demanding $1,000 per household for community protection. It was extortion, blunt and obvious. She tried to scare elderly folks on Maple Street into selling by threatening foreclosures. That got Elena's blood boiling. Elder abuse is one of those things that brings down the hammer when judges see it. We built a plan that night in our dining room while Elena's new badge still glittered on the table. Controlled demolition, she called it. Let her hang herself in public. Capture it on video. Bring every family in the room at once and let the pattern be obvious. Harold put together a slideshow. Betty made evidence packets. Mrs. Patterson had her footage. Elena called a friend at the county attorney's office. We had law enforcement on standby because Elena had friends who owed favors from previous cases. It was ruthless, but it was also the right kind of medicine. Delilah's attempt to rally the neighborhood turned into a trap. At the mandatory meeting, which she thought would be her stage, we rolled in with boxes of evidence and a projection showing that the Willowbrook Heights HOA did not exist in the state corporation database. No legal incorporation, no authority. Delilah's face went the color of old paper. Her public defender walked in like somebody called to a bad accident. Elena stood and introduced herself. I'm Chief Elena Ramirez. I believe we've met. The room changed from sleepy suburbia to courtroom. 78 households realized they'd been paying fines to a phantom. The dam broke. People stood up, asked about their money, demanded answers. Betty clicked through a timeline that showed how fines escalated whenever people asked questions. The sound in that room was a release, years of fear spilling into righteous anger. What followed happened fast. Jake and 2 goons were arrested on federal charges impersonating law enforcement, mail fraud conspiracy. Delilah had tried to break into homes at night to destroy evidence. Mrs. Patterson's security system uploaded everything to the cloud in real time. She literally documented herself committing felonies. When officers cuffed her, she kept talking threats about political connections and corrupt cops. And Elena put those threats on record too. Threatening an officer attempting to intimidate witnesses running a fraudulent HOA, the federal case stacked up like cordwood. Justice isn't always cinematic, but this time it was satisfying. Asset forfeiture returned the stolen money. Families got restitution. The Rodriguez family rebuilt their ramp and sued for ADA violations. Delilah pleaded guilty to racketeering and got time in federal prison. The neighborhood passed real reforms, required annual audits, mandatory registration for associations, legal scaffolding so future Delilahs wouldn't find the same sandbox to play in. Here's the part that stuck with me. It wasn't just about punishment. It was about people finding their voice again. After it was over, the street changed in ways you notice in small things. Kids playing in yards without parents glaring at them, neighbors waving without suspicion. We used recovered funds to start a community trust that paid for accessibility updates for families who needed them. Elena started a Know Your Rights program so other communities wouldn't be fooled. Harold and Betty became local champions for HOA reform. Mrs. Patterson. She coordinated the neighborhood watch and finally planted her husband's memorial garden back where it belonged. So what's the point of telling you all this? Maybe it's obvious, don't let people bully you with fake authority. But I think it's deeper. Power grows in silence. Fraud feeds on confusion. The real moral is this: documentation matters and community matters. If people talk to each other, really talk, share records, compare notes, a small group of bullies can't hijack a whole neighborhood. Now I'm curious, have you ever seen someone weaponize the rules to control people? Did a neighbor, a manager, or an organization use paperwork like a scythe to cut others down? Tell me what happened, how you reacted, and whether it ended the way it should have. Share your story because the more we hear, the harder it gets for bullies to hide.